He was a senior advisor to Barack Obama before you had ever even heard of Barack Obama. And he arrives here now, free to talk, having left the administration behind, at a time when he really is the guy you want to talk to, in part because so much is in flux in the stuff that he knows so much about. The president now, today and last night, is now going around the leadership of the Republican Party to eat with non-senior Republican senators and members of Congress. The president hosted Paul Ryan today for lunch. He hosted 12 Republican senators last night for dinner at a Washington hotel. Furthermore, the Republicans' biggest publicity stunt in months was also pulled off yesterday without the knowledge of the party's leadership. Senator Rand Paul essentially snuck onto the Senate floor to start his epic filibuster yesterday without telling anyone who was in charge. That was followed today by the old guard of the Republican Party on national security issues denouncing Rand Paul for doing that filibuster, even as 14 other Republican senators took to the floor last night to help him out. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, the Republicans' chaos and infighting and backhanding their own leadership is not necessarily redounding to the Democrats' advantage, at least not yet. Look at this. This is right after the election. You see the date there, 11/25? This is right after the 2012 election, in which Democrats, of course, did way better than expected in the White House and in the Congress and in the Senate. Right after the election, this came out, listing the top priorities for the Democrats in the U.S. Senate. One of the highest immediate priorities for Democrats is to persuade these veteran Democratic senators to not retire. Senators Tim Johnson, Jay Rockefeller, Frank Lautenberg, Tom Harkin, and Carl Levin. The first priority of the Democrats in the Senate is that these guys can't retire. Well, today, Carl Levin announced that he is going to retire. And, of course, we have learned that Tom Harkin is going to retire, too. And, of course, Frank Lautenberg is going to retire, too. And, of course, Jay Rockefeller is going to retire, too. As for Tim Johnson, who knows? Not saying yet. The top priority was to keep those 5 guys. 4 of the 5 are gone. And the last one, who knows? So from this last election where the Democrats did great, we are heading toward a next one in which the field is really tilted against the Democrats, maybe even more so than it was before. And the Republicans did terrible in the last election. They are in chaos in Congress. That is making for a bewildering governing environment right now for the president's second term. But in the middle of all that today, we learned that the autopsy the Republican Party commissioned to figure out why they did so badly and what is wrong with them as a party, that autopsy is done. The group looking at what went wrong in 2012 has finished its work. The Republican Party chairman announced on Conservative Talk Radio today that the report is ready to be released.
So when do we see that? When do we get the blueprint?
Well, we're going to have some details on this issue coming out around March 18th.
On March 18th, in fact, the Republican Party has booked the National Press Club to release its self-diagnosis of why they think they just lost so badly. But on Talk Radio today, the Republican Party chairman, Reince Priebus, gave this preview of what the party found when they looked into their problems, what the party thinks their big problem was, and how they plan to fix it. Listen.
You're going to see the skeleton of this plan start to roll out in the next few weeks. And if you look real hard, you'll see that I've made comments and similar to what I just told you on this issue in the press over the last couple weeks, and that controlling the debate process, getting involved in moderators and networks and all of these other issues so that we don't have chaos. I mean, we just can't have MSNBC hosting a debate at the Reagan Library only to have their network make the commentary afterwards for 3 hours about the debate of the Republican Party. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Do you think they know that MSNBC would talk about what happened at a Republican debate, even if it happened on another network? We were the reason you guys lost? We're what needs to be fixed in the Republican Party? Seriously? I find this to be excellent news. Joining us now is David Axelrod, former senior advisor for President Obama, now an NBC and MSNBC senior political strategist. This is his first primetime interview since making that leap. Mr. Axelrod is also the director of the University of Chicago's Institute of Politics. David, thank you for being here.
Great to be here. I'm a little exhausted listening to your lead-in, and that was a truncated version there, but a lot happening here.
I did my standard 17 minutes. I do feel like we've got a lot of interesting stuff going on the Republican side. as there has been for a long time yet. I still feel like the Republican Party doesn't know who it is post-Bush and Cheney. But there are a lot of moving parts. And I want to ask you first about what you think about their self-diagnosis about what happened in 2012. You were there.
I was there, and we were chatting before at my institute in Chicago. John Huntsman tonight, I think, said it best. He said it was a failure of strategy and vision, not tactics. Tactics are secondary. I mean, it's interesting to hear Chairman Priebus posit what he did there, because my recollection is that the most damaging, one of the most damaging exchanges in all those debates came on a Fox debate when they all said they wouldn't accept $1 of new revenue, right, even if it brought with it $10 of cuts. The problem wasn't the format, it wasn't the venue, it wasn't the commentary after the debates. It's what the candidates said in the debates, and they were responding to the most strident voices in the party who were in control of that party. So they talked about self-deportation, and they talked about this revenue issue in the way that they did. They talked about ending Planned Parenthood. They talked about their unified opposition to gay marriage. And they drove away large numbers of Americans from their party. That is what their problem is. Their problem is more fundamental than simply the commentary after their debates. It's what happened during the debate.
They think that they could fix that, too, by not having MSNBC or even NBC host a debate, when everybody would still weigh in.
Well, the truth is, if you talk to them privately, what they want is no debates. They don't want any primary debates, because what happened to Mitt Romney is that he had to pass through this toll booth, this right-wing toll booth, in order to get the nomination. And he made a calculation that it was worth doing because Barack Obama, in his view, was so vulnerable that just getting the nomination by any means necessary was enough. And what he found was that when he got out of that toll booth, he had largely disqualified himself. He lost Latinos by massive numbers, big gender gap, young voters again voting heavily against the. By the way, on the issue of self-deportation and the sort of nativist tone of the party's rhetoric, they lost Asian Americans by vast numbers in this election. I think that's one of the reasons why. So their answer is, let's not talk about that stuff. Let's try and bypass that, and they'd love to have no debates if they could.
Well, the other thing that's going on that subject, on stridency and having to go through this sort of ideological toll booth, since it is an odd-numbered year now, we keep getting told, well, the Republicans are going to moderate on these positions. They're going to moderate on gay rights. They're going to moderate on immigration. They're going to start dialing back some of the stuff that was so alienating during the general election. And we're seeing all sorts of elected officials do that, and all sorts of talking heads and columnists and things do that. But elected Republicans are not shifting on that subject, even in an odd-numbered year. What's holding them back?
Because many of them run in venues that are homogenous in terms of the party participation, and the only thing they ever fear, they never face a general election. The only thing they fear are primaries. And those primaries tend to be dominated by the most strident voices in their party. So even, for example, on an issue like gun control and background checks, which has a 92% approval rating among Americans, there's some doubt as to whether that will pass in Congress, because many of these members are concerned about what will happen in primaries in their districts and what the NRA will do within those primaries.
Well, in terms of a governing environment, then, and just take the issue of background checks, how do Democrats then reasonably strategize if they need to get Republicans to move and they appreciate why Republicans can't? How do they move forward on that?
No, I think this is it's a big challenge. I think the big challenge for the Republican Party is they have this tension between the needs of their congressional majority in the House and their desire to become a national party. They can never become a national party unless they moderate some of these positions. And so ultimately, they're going to have a discussion among themselves. But it was interesting the other day when Governor Bush, Jeb Bush, someone who I think I was looking to and I've always seen take slightly different positions. He did on revenue, for example. He said, "Yeah, sure, I'd take that money." But on the issue of immigration, which was a signature issue for him, he just wrote a book, and he changed his position and said, no citizenship for undocumented workers. And I think that was a recognition that this is going to be a hard thing that this environment is going to be hard to change within the Republican Party.
I think it's telling that he makes that switch at the same time that he floats he may want to run in 2016. David Axelrod, do you mind staying a moment? Something
Happy
else
to
came up
stay.
in the news today that I actually don't know what the politics are of it, and I want to use you as a crystal ball.
All right, let's do it.
David Axelrod with us again when we come back. Hold on.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. We do not give up. Expect surprises. Subscribe.